In this video, you will see what is the top 10 must-have units in Anime Vanguards Update 1.1. Every units in this video are all obtainable. I do want to know, what do you think is the best unit in Anime Vanguards Update 1.1? Remember to subscribe and like. And with that being said, let's freaking go. Whoa, I'm getting owned right now. What the frick? In no particular order, the first must-have unit is Chayen Berlion. Chayen is one of the newest battle pass unit you can obtain in this new Anime Vanguards Update 1.1. And he became one of the strongest damage per second, especially with his insane burn and passives. Chayen Berlion stats are max upgrade and max LR, 15,460 damage with his SPA at 6.6 seconds, making his damage per second at 2,342.42, which is insanely strong, especially he is a 4 placement and does burn off rip. Chayen's first passive, Halcyon Flame, his attacks will inflict burn equal to 10% of this unit's damage and increases burn damage by 3% per attack up to 30%. Chayen's second passive, now Annihilation, his range will increase by 20% if an enemy is burning. His damage will increase by 5% for each burning enemy up to 50%. How to get Chayen Berlion is from the newest Battle Pass Tier 50. Alright, next unit is Igis Elite Knight. Igis is one of the best secret, especially he will become a fully Wii at later upgrades with his strong passive. Igis Elite Knight stats a max upgrade and max LR, 16,930 damage with his SPA at 5.3 seconds, making his damage per second at 3,194.33. which is extremely strong, especially he becomes a full AoE. Igis' first passive, he will deal 25% more damage dealing against a boss. His second passive, he will gain 30% damage, lessening his SPA by 10% and immune to stun on placement. His last passive buffs his damage by 20% and range by 10% for 100 seconds after a shadow enters Igis' range. How to get Igis Elite Knight is by defeating the Double Dungeon Disaster Legend stage, and he is a 0.75% drop rate, so good luck to everyone who is grinding for Igis. You can also do the Igis boss event, which will be a drop on there as well. Okay, next in is Choso Blood Curse. Choso is one of the best bleed unit, especially with his overpowered passives and fully Wii at later upgrades in this new Anime Vanguards Update 1.1. Choso Blood Curse stats a max upgrade and max LR, 11,580 damage with his SPA at 6.5 seconds, making his damage per second at 1,781.53, which isn't too bad, especially he does bleed, which will cancel out regeneration enemies and will become fully Wii at later upgrades. I do want to say that he is meta for the newest boss Sukuna, King of Curses event. Choso Blood Curse first passive, Blood Manipulation, this attack will inflict bleed equal to 35% of this unit's damage. His second passive, Flowing Blood, with each attack performed, damage dealt 5% more on a bleeding enemy up to 50%. Wowee! Alright, next unit is Jogo Volcanic. Jogo is one of the best units to have, especially with his insane passives and ability at later upgrade. Jogo Volcanic stats are max upgrade and max LR, 17,370 damage with his SPA at 6.7 seconds, making his damage per second at 2,592.53, which is insanely strong, especially with his insane passives and ability. Jogo Volcanic's first passive, Rising Flames, his attack will inflict burn equal to 30% of this unit's damage, with his damage increasing by 0.4% with each kill up to 20%. His second passive, Iron Kofik, he will gain the ability Iron Kofik when activated, damage dealt 50% when hitting burning enemies, and attack hit all enemies in range while Iron Coffin is active, which is insanely strong, especially with his huge range. One last thing, Jogo Volcanic ability is a world cooldown, so think wisely how you use his ability. Okay, next unit is Obito Awakened. Obito is one of the best mythical unit, especially he will be able to deal burn damage at later upgrades, and he is meta for the newest tournament in this Anime Vanguards Update 1.1. Obito Awakened stats a max upgrade and max level are 9080 damage with its SPA at 4.3 seconds, making his damage per second at 2111.62, which is one of the best damage per second, and he will be able to deal burn damage, which is extremely strong. Obito Awakened's first passive is his SPA lessens by 3% per wave down to 12%, and his second passive, his attack will inflict burn equal to 30% of Obito's damage. Alright, next unit is Alucard Vampire King. Alucard is the rarest secret unit, and he became one of the best secrets with his insane passive and ability at later upgrades, and at the same time he is extremely good for the new tournament since he does bleed right off the rip. Alucard Vampire King stats a max upgrade and max level are 9890 damage with his SPA at 4.5 seconds, making his damage per second at 2220, which is insanely good, especially he will become a full AoE. At later upgrades, he will also get a new ability Restraint level 0 when activated, summoning ghouls. While ghouls are present on the map, Alucard's SPA will be decreased by 10% until they are dead. Each time a ghoul dies, Alucard's damage is increased by 1% up to 35%. How to get Alucard is by summoning on the banner, and there is a 1 out of 25,000 chance of getting him, so good luck to everyone who is summoning for Alucard. Okay, next in is Julius Explosion. Julius is one of the best support, especially with his freeze, which will be useful in this new Boss Rush Sukuna event. Julius Explosion stats a max upgrade and max level are 38,480 damage with its SPA at 6.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 6012.5, which is insanely good for a support unit. Julius Explosion first passive is Mirrored Frost. When he attacks, he will be able to freeze enemies. His SPA will also lower by 1% each time an enemy is frozen, capping at 10%. His second passive, Chilling Contempt, his damage will increase by 7% with each attack up to 56%, and his range increases by 7% per wave up to 35%, which is insanely overpowered. How to get Julius Explosion is from the Tier 25 Battle Pass. Alright, next in is Chayen Blade Dancer. Chayen is one of the strongest mythical unit, especially with her insane passive and crit damage, and at the same time she is extremely meta for this new Sukuna boss event. Chayen stats a max upgrade and max level are 5,720 damage with her SPA at 6.3 seconds, making her damage per second at 907.93, which may seem low, but in reality she has an insane crit rate and crit damage. Chayen Blade Dancer's first passive will have her crit rate increased by 20%, crit damage by 50%. Her crit rate will increase 15% more when attacking a boss. Her second passive, she will be immune to any debuff on her and inflicts an extra instance of damage up after performing a dodge that will deal 65% of her current damage. Oh my gosh. Meta. Okay, next in is Sukuna. Sukuna is one of the newest secret unit added in this new anime Vanguards update 1.1, and he became one of the strongest secrets, especially with this insane ability he gets and passives at later upgrades. I do want to mention that he is extremely meta for the new tournament. Sukuno's stats a max upgrade and max level are 103,320 damage with his SPA at 5.6 seconds, making his damage per second at 18,450, which is extremely meta, especially with his nuke ability he gets at later upgrades. And he's extremely good for the new tournament, so I highly recommend to get this unit, guys. Sukuno's first passive, King's Curse, his attacks before upgrade 9 cleaves enemies, making them take 20% more damage from bleed. Sukuno's second passive, Sinister Sanctum, at upgrade 8. He gains the ability Sinister Sanctum. His damage will increase by 1% for each kill during the Sinister Sanctum, up to 30%, and at the same time, it will deal 300% of Sukuna's damage, and it is a global cooldown, making Monarch the best trait on Sukuna, especially his ability attacks everyone in his range. Sukuna's third passive, Divine Flames, at upgrade 9, he gains the fire element. his damage will increase by 40% and he will be immune to stun, which is insanely overpowered. How to evolve Itadori to Sukuna is by defeating 10 of the King of Curses from the latest boss event and get 20 fingers from the Jujutsu Kaisen Infinite Mode. Good luck to everyone who is trying to get Sukuna. Alright, next unit is Song Jinwoo Monarch. Song Jinwoo is still one of the strongest mythical unit, especially with his insanely good ability he gets at later upgrades and multi-hit on placement, which will be great against shield enemies. Song Jinwoo Monarch stats a max upgrade and max LR, 13,450 damage with his SPA at 5.6 seconds, making his damage per second at 2,401.78. which is extremely good, especially with its ability that he gets. Song Jinwoo Monarch's first passive is, he will gain 0.1% damage per takedown up to 40%. With this second passive, killing enemies adds them to his shadow army up to 40 shadows, and when activating Arise, it will summon 15 shadows and summons 5 shadow knights. Song Jinwoo Monarch's last passive, each time a shadow defeats an enemy, his damage will increase by 2.5%, maxing at 25%. Units in range that includes the name Igis also receives the damage increase. Okay, next unit is Gojo Infinity. Gojo is one of the best unit with his insane passives and ability at later upgrades in this new anime Vanguards update 1.1. Gojo Infinity stats a max upgrade and max LR, 40,050 damage with his SPA at 9.8 seconds, making his damage per second at 4,086.73, which is insanely strong, especially he becomes a full AoE unit at later upgrades with an overpowered passives. Oh my gosh. Gojo's first passive, Strongest Sorcerer, he will gain 20% damage and lessens his SPA by 10%. His second passive, Limitless, he is immune to any status ailments, which is insanely strong. Not only that, his damage will increase by 0.1% with each wave pass. His third passive, Unlimited Expansion, he will gain the ability Void. His SPA will be reduced by 2% for each kill during the Void down to 10%. And when Void is activated, Gojo will gain 50% more damage and all enemies in his range are frozen for 10 seconds, which is insanely overpowered. So I highly recommend to get this unit. How to evolve Gojo is from doing the Jujutsu Kaisen Infinite and get fingers from Sukuna, and he is a RNG boss. Then once you have 20 fingers, you can transfer it for 2 eyes, which you will be needing to evolve your Gojo. Alright, next unit is Toji Sorcerer Killer. Toji is one of the strongest damage per second unit with his overpowered passives. Toji Sorcerer stats a max upgrade and max LR, 20,580 damage with his SPA at 6.5 seconds, making his damage per second at 3,166.15, which is insanely good, especially with his overpowered passives. 2G Sorcerer's first passive, Heavenly Body, his damage will increase by 50% when no buffs are active on this character. Second passive, Challenging Infinity, his range increases by 20% and his attacks removes shields entirely and ignore damage reduction, with his damage increasing up to 30% until an enemy is killed after removing shields. His last passive, Curse Inventory, Toji gains an ability Curse. Using Curse Inventory, will swap between Chain Blitz and Domain Breaker. Domain Breaker increases his range by 25% and increases boss damage, while Chain Blitz increases 10% damage, so I highly recommend to use Chain Blitz when focusing on bosses. How to get 2G Sorcerer is by doing the worm quest you can get from defeating Act 6 of the Jujutsu Kaisen story mode, and completing the quest will let you sacrifice one evolved unit from Jujutsu Kaisen update, and you'll be able to obtain Toji and have a chance to get a shiny version as well. So good luck to everyone who is trying to get shiny Toji. Okay, next one is Tengen Flashiness. Tengen is one of the strongest damage per second with his full AoE and passives in this new anime Vanguards update 1.1. Tengen Flashiness stats a max upgrade and max LR, 16,880 damage with his SPA at 7.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 2,281.08. Tengen Flashiness first passive is Gojo Flashiness, increases his damage and range by 10%, increases his dodge chance by 3% with each attack performed up to 60%. Tengen's second passive, his damage will increase by 10% with each consecutive attack on the same enemy up to 30%, with this SPA reducing by 2%, with each attack performed down to 30%, which is insanely strong, so I highly recommend to get Tengen, especially he becomes a full AoE unit at later upgrades. Okay, next in is Rengoku Purgatory. Rengoku is still one of the best DPS with this insane passive and burn in this new anime Vanguards update 1.1, especially he is insanely meta in the latest tournament. Rengoku Purgatory stats a max upgrade and max of LR, 46,150 damage with his SPA at 5.8 seconds, making his damage per second at 7,856.89, which is extremely strong. Rengoku Purgatory first passive, Flame Breathing, is his attack inflict burn damage equal to 30% of his damage. Rengoku's second passive, Unwavering Focus, increases his damage by 5% on a consecutive attack done to the same enemy up to 20%. Rengoku's third passive, Purgatory Unleash, increases his burn damage equal to 60% of damage enemies hit by attacks are inflicted with Purgatory Flames, making them receive 40% more burn damage, which pairing other flame units with Rengoku Purgatory is going to be meta. How to get Rengoku Purgatory is by defeating the new Raid Act 4 Web Demon, where there is a 1% chance on obtaining Rengoku, and I highly recommend to bring Blossom in your team when doing Act 4 with her insane cleanse. Finally, the last unit is Vegeta Super Awakened. Vegeta is still one of the best mythical unit, especially with this multi-hit on placement, which will be great against shield enemies, and at the same time he is great in the latest Boss Rush Sukuna event. Vegeta Super Awakened stats a max upgrade and max of LR, 8,820 damage with his SPA at 4.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 2004.54, which is extremely good, especially he is a line AoE. Vegeta's first passive is, if only the units in range include the name Vegeta, his SPA will lessen by 20%. His second passive will increase his damage by 100% when hitting one enemy. That was everything for this video on the top 10 must-have units in Anime Vanguards Update 1.1. I hope this video helped you in some sort of way. Remember to subscribe and like, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye bye.